1 out of every 4 new cars sold in Mexico may now be built in China. But America has spent years trying to push China out. So why is China suddenly becoming so powerful in Mexico? In this video, we're going to find out. Are Chinese cars taking over Mexico? Why are American companies buying Chinese parts for Mexican factories? And why did America and China both become nervous about the exact same factory? But by the end of this, we'll discover the biggest question I had. Is Mexico becoming China's back door into America? Because the cars are only the beginning. China sells Mexico phones, machines, electronics, factory parts. Mexico then sells most of what it makes to the United States. So what if America never really escaped China? And the clearest place to start is on Mexican roads. BYD, MG, JAC. Brands most Americans have barely heard of are becoming normal in Mexico. Chinese brands now make up 17% of Mexico's new car market, but that number only counts the cars carrying Chinese badges. Some cars built in China are sold under familiar international brands. Count those too, and cars made in China may represent nearly 28% of the Mexican market. So the Chinese car boom is much larger than the logos make it look. And this happened really fast. Chinese automakers arrived with lower prices, modern interiors, bigger screens, longer warranties, and electric and hybrid options that older brands just couldn't match. For many families, the deal was simple. More car, more technology, less money. I thought that explained it, but there was a problem. Mexico already was one of the world's biggest car-producing countries. So why is a country that builds so many cars suddenly buying cars from China? Because China is not only selling Mexico finished vehicles, it is also selling Mexico the machines, electronics, and parts for its factories. And once I followed that trail, the story became much bigger than cars. In 2025, Mexico bought about $120 billion in goods from China. It sold about $9 billion back. To put that simply, Mexico bought roughly $13 from China for every dollar it sold there. But Mexico does not sell most of its products to China. It sells them to the United States. In 2025, about 83% of Mexican exports went north to America. China received only around 2%. So Mexico's economy faces two directions. It buys heavily from China, and then it sells heavily to America. Mexico buys the parts from China. Mexico workers build the product in Mexico, and then the United States buys the final product. 3 countries, 1 supply chain, and that created a bigger question. America may believe it replaced China with Mexico, but what if some of the products America buys from Mexico still depend on Chinese machines and parts? How much China can be inside of something labeled made in Mexico? At first, the answer seemed obvious. If it says made in Mexico, it must be Mexican. But modern manufacturing does not work that way. A car assembled in Mexico can contain parts from China, America, Japan, Germany, and several other countries. The label tells you where the final product was built. It doesn't mean every part came from the same place. There are rules though. For a car to receive the main trade benefits under the agreement between Mexico, United States, and Canada, 75% of its content must come from North America. Chinese parts are allowed, but only up to a point. Think of it like a recipe. Some ingredients can come from other countries, but most of the final product has to count as North American. That seems simple enough, but I found a part of the story that got a little strange. Chinese companies are not the only ones buying Chinese parts for Mexican factories. American and other international companies buy them too. So one estimate found that about 70% of Mexican imports from China were being purchased by foreign companies operating inside Mexico. Many of them were major American and international manufacturers. Wait, Washington is currently trying to push China out, but American companies are still buying Chinese parts for factories in Mexico. And another estimate found that roughly 7% of the value inside Mexican goods exported to America came from China. Now, that does not mean that Mexico is simply relabeling Chinese products. Mexican workers and factories are doing real work, but it does mean that the United States may still depend on China even when the final product arrives from Mexico. So the real mystery was no longer, is China sneaking through Mexico? It became, how do you remove China from a system that American companies are still choosing to use? Then I found one factory that made both countries nervous. BYD, one of China's biggest electrical car companies, considered building a major factory in Mexico. Mexico saw the investment, new technology, and potentially thousands of jobs. And Washington saw something else, a possible route for Chinese cars to move closer to the American market. America was worried that BYD factory in Mexico could make it easier for Chinese cars to eventually reach the United States. But then the story flipped. China reportedly became nervous about the exact same factory. Why? Because building advanced cars so close to America could expose Chinese technology. Beijing reported that they worried that BYD's knowledge could leak to American competition. America feared China getting in, and China feared technology getting out. The same factory scared both countries for opposite reasons, and Mexico was standing directly between them. That may be one of the most important parts of the entire story. Mexico was not simply helping China, it was not simply helping America. It had become the meeting point between two countries that wanted to access each other's markets but didn't trust each other. Mexico now faced a difficult choice: accept Chinese investment and create jobs, or limit investment and protect its relationship with America. But Mexican consumers had already voted with their money. They kept buying these Chinese cars. So Mexico responded with a 50% tariff on vehicles from China and other countries without a Mexican free trade agreement. The goal was simple: slow the imports and protect Mexican industry. But then something strange happened. Chinese brand sales still increased. Their market share rose from 14% to 17%. It looked like the tariff had failed, but the numbers were hiding something. Chinese automakers had reportedly sent large numbers of cars into Mexico before the tariff began. So while dealerships were still selling those cars, new imports had already dropped by about 43%. And then it clicked. Mexico may have slowed the pipeline, but it simply did not empty out the parking lots yet. Sales showed what people were buying, and imports showed what companies were still bringing in. The tariff did not immediately destroy the demand. It attacked the supply. But the deeper I looked, the clearer it became that cars were the only visible part. China's biggest product sale to Mexico was not even cars. It was phones and wireless equipment worth more than $9 billion in 2024. China was already inside of Mexico homes, inside of businesses, and inside of factories. And this is where the story gets even more serious, because buying a phone is one thing. Depending on another country for machinery and factory parts is totally different. A phone can be replaced. A supply chain can be much harder to replace. And that's why America cares so much about this. America does not only care about where the final products were assembled, it cares about what is inside of it. Because if Mexican factories still depend heavily on Chinese components, America may have reduced its direct connection to China without removing the indirect connection. And that is exactly what the data suggests. Mexico is not mainly acting as a simple warehouse where Chinese products get a new label. The relationship is way more complicated. Chinese parts enter Mexico. Mexican workers add real value. American and international companies operate their factories, and the finished goods and products may then move north up to the United States. That is not a fake Mexican product, but it is also not a complete product from Mexico. So is Mexico choosing China over America? No. Mexico cannot afford to choose only one side. America buys most of what Mexico exports. China supplies nearly 1/5 of what Mexico imports. America is Mexico's biggest customer, and China is one of Mexico's biggest suppliers. At first, it looks like power. Mexico can sell to one superpower and buy from the other. It can attract companies from both countries, and it can become more important because both sides need it. But there is a problem that also gives both countries leverage over Mexico. America can threaten Mexico's access to its biggest customer, and China can disrupt the parts and the products that Mexican companies depend on. And regular Mexicans feel both sides of that conflict. A cheaper Chinese car can help one family today, but if the cheap imports weaken a Mexican factory, another family could lose its income tomorrow. Chinese machinery can help a Mexican company grow, but depending too heavily on Chinese parts can become dangerous if tariffs rise or supplies stop. And that's when everything clicked. I had been asking whether Mexico was choosing the United States or China, but Mexico is not trying to choose. Mexico is trying to benefit from both without becoming dependent on either. So, is Mexico becoming China's backdoor into America? Not in most ways people imagine. China is not simply sending finished products through Mexico, changing the label and pretending they were made there. The real system is much deeper. Chinese parts and machines enter Mexico. Mexican workers and factories add real value. Americans and international companies help run the system, and many finished products then move to North America. Some of the companies buying those products are Chinese, and some are Mexican, and some are from the United States. The United States did not remove China from its economy. It made the connection harder to see. The USA remains Mexico's most important customer. China is becoming the most important supplier, and Mexico is where both systems still meet. That gives Mexico power, but it also leaves Mexico exposed. It depends on one country for customers, and it depends on another country for supplies. And that might be the real answer. America discovered that removing the Chinese label is much easier than removing the Chinese supply chain. Can Mexico keep benefiting from both countries, or will it eventually be forced to choose? Let me know what you think in the comments, and subscribe to keep discovering the hidden systems shaping life here in Mexico. You can also join the channel for early access, bonus videos, and you get to vote on what I investigate next.